Assalamualaikum. My name is Kara Hazibin Kamaran Zaman. I'm from the KM3C. Today I will explain the case study. Okay. The discussion for the case study is responsibility. A sense of moral responsibility and forward-looking is a sense in which a person is responsible for achieving good result in some things. The idea is that one is entrusted to achieve or maintain this result, and it is hoped that both of them have relevant knowledge and skills as well as make a careful effort. However, despite the best efforts, the result may not be achievable. For example, a responsible doctor, patient can die, and the work of a responsible engineer can result in an accident because the accident is unpredictable, impossible to compensate for the cause of the accident, or because others do not want to hit the engineer's warning to hurt the engineer's warning. A sense of moral responsibility and backwardness is that where a person or group deserves an ethical assessment of an action or outcome, one who is quick to receive moral praise for a good outcome or a bad blame. A sense of moral responsibility cannot be confused with a sense of cause and effect responsibility for some existing or past circumstances. Although when a moral agent is responsible for a result, there is the reason to think that the agent is morally responsible for it. However, casual responsibility is not definitive proof of moral responsibility. If one's action brings bad result only because of bad luck in the form of an accident, then one is not morally responsible for the result. Future responsibility is often determined in terms of the outcome to be achieved rather than the action to be taken. Consideration is required to know what action will achieve certain outcome. Such practical wisdom is not required to fulfill the many obligations that are often determined in terms of action to be taken or to be avoided. For example, contrast the responsibility of engineers for the safety of the public with the obligation of citizens to testify when witnessing a crime. Note that the obligation will never be used in a responsible way is referring to one's welfare. That is, you will not say that the person is obligated, although you may say that he is responsible. Okay. Conclusion for this case study. For case study 1, engineer A does not have an ethical obligation to continue his effort to secure a change in the policy of his employer. Under these circumstances, or to report his concerns to proper authority, but has ethical right to do as a matter of personal conscience. Okay, that's for case study 1. Okay, for case study 2, the question is refusing to sign or seal construction documents. Engineer Sarina left firm A, at which she was an employee, to work for a competitor firm B, a project on which she was in charge, while at firm A was virtually completed before she left, but she did not sign or seal the construction documents before leaving. Tan, a principal in the first film, requests Sarina to sign and seal the drawing. Can Sarina refuse to sign or seal the construction documents? Can Sarina can Sarina ask firm A to pay her for signing the document? What are Sarina's obligations with respect to the work she left behind? Okay. The introduction is engineer Sarina left firm A and goes to work for firm B, a competitor. A project on which engineer Sarina was in a responsible charge was virtually completed, but engineer Sarina did not sign or seal the construction documents before leaving firm A's employment. Engineer Tan, a principal in firm A, requests engineer Sarina to sign and seal the drawing. Engineer Sarina refused to sign or seal the construction document unless firm A pays engineer Sarina an additional fee. The discussion: the duty of engineers to be responsible for professional service is the basic ethical principle contained in the NSPE Code of Ethics. In general, engineers as professionals have a responsibility to assume responsibility for the professional service performed by them or under their direct personal supervision. Depending on the nature of the work and other requirements, this may include work done for the benefit of the client, design, reports, plans, specification, and work complete by the engineer who will be submitted to the public authority for approval. Engineer works for one firm and then move to another firm are not exempt for, from this professional responsibility. The work they did for their previous employer was no less also because they no longer had a direct relationship with the company. Once a professional provides professional service on behalf of the client, the professional must ensure that the work is done in a responsible and professional manner and that the client interests are protected and safeguarded. This situation can be very sensitive where an engineer leaves the company to work with a competitor company. This issue has been discussed by BAR on many occasions. However, the fact that the two companies are in direct competition should not assume the responsibility of the engineer to take responsibility for the job and take appropriate measures in the interest of the client. It seems that it is not just an ethical act, but also an action that suits the interests of all parties, including the interest of the new employed by the current engineer. It is entirely clear from the fact to what extent the work was completed by engineer Sarina. However, it can be assumed by the fact and the use of the term almost complete that the work was completed in almost all respects and only a few ministerial details still have to be carried out has to be carried out. On that basis, it can be assumed that Engineer Tan will not be asked to conduct a complete or detailed review of the job, as it can assume that Engineer Sarina is already very familiar with the job on the project for which he has been continues to be responsible. Moreover, it does not appear under the fact that because Engineer Sarina was not employed by the original firm at the time he was asked to sign and close the photograph that he would violate the ethical claims contained in the NSPE Code of Ethics. Conclusion: we are concerned with engineer Sarina's professional attitude regarding the film's request for him to sign and close the photograph. While we believe engineer Sarina may be entitled to a small fee for additional professional treatment for his former employer and as part of responsibilities to his new company, we are shocked by engineer Sarina's refusal to sign and close the photograph except to pay additional compensation. As we have discussed before, because engineer Sarina is responsible for the job and has direct control and personal oversight of the job, engineer Sarina has a professional obligation to sign the work regardless of how the compensation problem is resolved. It is unclear whether competition pressure between firms may be a factor in engineer Sarina's position, but such a factor cannot occur in this type of problem by signing and closing photos. Assuming we are in this case that engineer Sarina is fully responsible for the job and has direct control and personal supervision over the job, engineer Tan is clearly allowed to ask engineer Sarina to sign and seal the document in question. That's all for the case study 2. Then next is case study 3. The question is comment by one engineer concerning another. Engineer Alice practice in Ohio but requires the service of structural engineer license in New York. Alice contacts secretary of the New York Society of Professional Engineers to ask for a recommendation. The secretary looks at the list of member engineers and suggests Anna. Largely on the basis of the suggestion, Alice hires Anna. Alice is not satisfied with Anna's service. Among other things, she believes Anna does not communicate well. How Alice handled the situation? Should Alice contact the secretary to inform him that he did not give good recommendation? Should Alice contact the secretary without first saying something to Anna? The introduction. Engineer Alice practicing in Ohio requires the service of a structural engineer in New York. Engineer Alice contacts secretary, who is the secretary of New York Society of Professional Engineers, to request the name of an appropriate engineer in New York to perform the required structural engineering work. Secretary suggests engineer Anna, who engineer Alice then decide to retain. Not satisfied with the services provided by engineer Anna, including engineer Anna's lack of regular communication with engineer Alice, engineer Alice later contacts secretary and tells secretary of his general dissatisfaction with engineer Anna, but does not first communicate this displeasure to engineer Anna. Engineer Alice also remarks to secretary that he is interested in retaining the service of another structural engineer for the project. Soon thereafter, engineer Anna contacts engineer Alice and expresses her strong displeasure towards engineer Alice for the comments she made to secretary. The discussion. In general, the NSPE Code of Ethics places an obligation on all engineers to respect the reputation of all other engineers in their professional endeavors. Engineers should be honest and direct in their communication with their colleagues in all professional matters. Often, individual engineers have professional and business relationships with their professional counterparts that require the use of appropriate judgment and discretion. The Board of Ethics has not had the opportunity to deal with any type of case spe- spe- specifically explained in the facts presented in this matter. The issue of public criticism by another engineer, but his statement is very different in that case. As the board understood the facts, Engineer Ellis needed the service of a structural engineer in another jurisdiction and sought the advice of a colleague in that jurisdiction, the secretary. This is entirely appropriate and certainly not contrary to the code. It seems that the only action that Engineer Ellis can question is when faced with the unsatisfactory professional performance of the secretary. Engineer Ellis pays attention to this fact to the secretary, while Engineer Ellis' communication with the secretary may be an appropriate method of providing feedback. Engineer Ellis should also direct comments about Engineer Anna to her. If Engineer Ellis has difficulty communicating with Engineer Anna, she will probably explore other avenues of relationship, perhaps frustrated by the inability to receive a responsible for Engineer Anna. Engineer Ellis deliberately made her views known to the secretary to make a fuss on Engineer Anna. Next to another question, we do not believe the secretary was involved in improper action. First, based on the facts, we assume that Engineer Ellis told Engineer Anna in good faith and did not know any history from Engineer Anna on the act of fraud. Second, based on the fact, we do not believe the secretary disclosure to Engineer Anna about Engineer Ellis dissatisfaction is a violation of engineers' belief in Ellis. In fact, as we already know, there seems to be some indication the Engineer Ellis meant secretary to make Engineer Ellis unhappy, not to Engineer Anna. While the facts do not provide enough detail, we believe that Engineer Anna has a professional responsibility to communicate more directly with Engineer Ellis about the status of the project. However, we do not believe Engineer Anna's action violate the Code of Ethics. Finally, although it seems that Engineer Anna is advised to improve her practice, the facts of the case do not indicate that Engineer Anna is unethical. The conclusion: a large number of employees come to work with intention of doing a good job and are proud of what they do. This makes them interested in what the organization is doing and what it has planned for the future. There, there is not much for more frustrating for employees than finding out about a new initiative either through someone outside the organization or by watching the 6 o'clock news. 6 o'clock news. I have both of these examples going on. That doesn't make leadership bad. It It just means that they often need help figuring out how to communicate and put in place systems and processes to do a better job. Too often, employees do not feel confident or involved in any decision-making process. Sandy Awards, Senior Vice President of AMA Enterprise said in a media statement, especially when it comes to the organization's business strategy or plans for the future. That's all from me. Thank you.